Welcome to Global News on Signature TV. I'm Charles Pius. In the headlines, the National Economic Council approves new livestock and textile development plan. The federal government to carry out a forensic audit of the NNPC. German economy to flatline in 2025 as tariff turmoil hits, government says, and Abia Angels Football Club held to a draw by Remo Stars ladies. Details shortly. The National Economic Council, NEC, says there is need to modernize livestock production in Nigeria to address the clashes between herders and farmers being witnessed in various parts of the country. The decision was reached during the 149th meeting of the Council held at the Presidential Villa in Abuja and presided over by Vice President Shatima. Briefing State House correspondent shortly after the meeting, Governor Duyo Diri of Bayelsa State said the Council agreed that the country cannot continue to live in the past, but should rather work towards modernizing livestock production. Governor Deary explained that the new Ministry of Livestock Development revealed an accelerated livestock development and growth strategy, which targets to boost revenue generation from the sector to between $70 billion and $90 billion by 2035. He said NEG also gave the green light for the establishment of a cotton, textile, and garment development board aimed at revitalizing agribusiness as part of the broader efforts to reshape the national economy and address insecurity at its roots. The meeting, which began with a minute of silence in honor of those killed in recent attacks in Benue and Plateau State, agreed that the new board will function under the presidency with leadership from the private sector and funding sourced from the textile import levy managed by the Nigerian Customs Service. The NEC approved key components of the reform, including a 100 billion naira funding transfer, creation of state-level ministries, promotion of red meat export to global markets, and private sector engagement. Further resolutions from the Council included the launch of a national headquarters and 6 regional branches for the Green Imperative Project, as well as the formal introduction of the National Agribusiness Policy Mechanism. Thursday's monthly meeting once again failed to discuss the issue of state police despite the worsening security situation in the country. Workers of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency NIMET have ended their strike following the federal government intervention. The industrial action, which had disrupted flight operations nationwide, was called off after a meeting with the Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, in Abuja. The workers had down tools over issues such as the delayed implementation of the new national minimum wage, exclusion of some staff from past allowances, and neglect of essential training programs. The meeting was attended by NIMET's Director General, officials from the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, NCAA, and representatives of various aviation unions, including the National Union of Air Transport Employees and the Association of Nigerian Aviation Professionals. The 2-day strike had caused major disruptions at key airports, including Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja and Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos, leaving many passengers stranded. The federal government has announced plans to initiate a forensic audit of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL. The Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Adun, has revealed that the recent shake-up at the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited is part of a broader effort by the federal government to conduct a thorough audit of the company. Speaking at the Nigerian Investor Forum held alongside the IMF World Bank spring meetings in Washington, D.C., Adun said the government is undertaking key reforms to reposition the economy, rebuild investor confidence, and attract private capital. Central Bank Governor Olayemi Cardoso also addressed the forum, noting that Nigeria's economy is on the path to stabilization and recovery. Crediting recent policy decisions, he stressed the country's firm commitment to orthodox monetary policy, saying there would be no backtracking. The Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC) has slammed Minister of Power Adebayo Adelabu over his claim that 150 million Nigerians currently enjoy stable electricity from a 5,500 megawatt supply, calling it a joke too far. In a statement from Abuja, NLC President Joe Ajero described the minister's remark as outrageous, arguing it ignores the daily realities of widespread blackouts, inflated tariffs, and a power sector plagued by profiteering. He stated that such a claim would only make sense if the country were producing at least 150,000 megawatts. Ajero blamed the nation's persistent electricity crisis on the 2013 privatization of the power sector, which he labeled a betrayal. He criticized the government for transferring national infrastructure to associate for 400 billion naira without improving a service delivery, and lamented the lack of accountability for underperforming distribution and generation companies whom he alleged are controlled by the same interests behind the sale. The Minister of Education, Dr. Maruf Alausa, has announced the release of 50 billion naira by the federal government to the academic and non-academic staff unions of federal universities for the settlement of earned allowances as promised by President Bola Tinubu. Alausa said in a statement in Abuja that the move was yet another testament to Tinubu's unwavering commitment to fundamentally transform Nigeria's education sector. He said the intervention is not just a financial transaction, but a reaffirmation of the president's belief in the capacity of Nigerian youths and the invaluable role that academic and non-academic staff play in nurturing them. The minister noted that by prioritizing their welfare, government is laying the foundation for a future where every Nigerian child receives highly qualitative and globally competitive education, and also expressed Tinubu's heartfelt appreciation to the academic and non-academic unions for their sustained trust in his administration and for fostering an atmosphere of peace and cooperation across Nigeria's federal institutions. The Minister of State for Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction, Dr. Yusuf Sununu, has appealed to development partners for support in implementing the Renewed Hope National Homegrown School Feeding Program. Speaking at a meeting in Abuja with NGOs and government officials, he said that the program aims to fight child hunger and promote education through daily nutritious meals made from locally sourced produce, benefiting both pupils and local farmers. He stressed the need for transparency, accountability, and stakeholders' collaboration for the program's success. The gloves off initial. Sununu revealed that the relaunch is set for May 29 to coincide with President Bola Tinubu's second year in office. He urged community participation, training of cooks, and greater inclusion of women and smallholder farmers. He described the initiative as capital intensive and called on all partners to support its effective rollout. The National Program Manager, Dr. Aderemi Adebowale, said the RH NHGSPF is about long-term investment in children and communities, with 100 billion naira allocated in the 2025 budget to scale its impact. She added that the QR-coded supply chains and real-time tracking will enhance transparency and quality. Adebowale also mentioned collaboration with the National Identity Management Commission to ensure proper registration and tracking of beneficiaries. The National Social Investment Programs Agency CEO, Dr. Badamasi Lawal, represented by Dr. Binta Musa, described the relaunch as a major step towards addressing malnutrition and inequality, urging stakeholders to collaborate towards achieving SDGs on hunger, education, and poverty. The Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Enugu State Investment Development Authority, Dr. Sam Obu, has charged local government authorities in the Enugu State to establish economic development plans to fast-track development in their areas. Dr. Obu gave the charge in a paper he delivered at the Economic Development Summit organized by the Oji River Local Government Council.
Aim is to prepare an economic blueprint that will form the basis for the development of the area in the next 30 years. Addressing the summit, the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Enugu State Investment Development Authority, Sam Obu, advised the local government to develop infrastructure and other development plans to grow the economy of the area. He noted that Oji River is blessed with vast natural resources and accomplished individuals who have capacity to bring about rapid development of the area.
Oji River is blessed with vast natural resources. We've heard that. Oji River is also blessed with indigenous. And some of the most educated, exposed, and accomplished indigenous, and I have a whole lot of them as my friends. Abundance, you know them and I know them, you're here. So you have got the next that attract investment.
In his own presentation, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Signature TV, Vimmat Nobiorilo, commended the Oji River Council Chairman, Greg Anyebudike, by towing the line of Governor Pitamba, digitalizing his administration. ILO, however, advised the council to set funds aside that would enable the youth tap into opportunities in the digital space.
The ICT infrastructure development, the national identity management system, and of course, the ICT incubation centers and digital skills development. These are things that are available. So how are we as a local government going to leverage? The local government must put away some funds that will be targeted specifically on these initiatives that the federal government has put in place and the state governments.
In his own presentation, an investment banker, Agnos Chukwekeze identified lack of easy access to land, insecurity and poor electricity as challenges that must be addressed to grow the economy of the area. Chukwekeze told the council to establish a local government investment office to articulate and engage with investors to explore the potentials in the area.
So first is that we need to set up a local government investment promotion office with a website, database, and resource center. And we need to ensure that we have community-driven security, organized vigilante groups with intelligence networks, and we need to fund them, to empower them to do the needful. We have to engage local investors first, because they are our most dependable partners. We have to engage local investors first. People should begin to think of building estates and building hotels. If you have 3 businesses outside Oji River, you can bring one down here. We need to simplify land acquisition and partnership with existing governmental or we are now urban area.
The member for Aneri and Oji River constituency in the National Assembly, Anayo Onwemu, regretted that Oji River has remained stagnant since the arrival of the missionaries to the area in the 1930s to date. He urged the people of the area to think home and bring back part of their resources to invest in the area.
We are learning to move forward. I want to thank you, the chairman, for articulating this summit. All the money you have in this world, the day you live, it will come through and stay stories. If you don't convert them into legacies that will complete us. My speech will be very short and simple. Let us go home and think deep and ask ourselves questions. Do we like to do what we this? The answer, I'm sure, is obvious. I think the answer is obvious. No. Let us make conscious efforts. The chairman has only called us here together. And I'm sure he has made it clear to us and left it that the product of the Nigeria is squarely and broken in our hands. Mr. Chairman, as much as you can, we are lucky to have who has made it possible to make it create all the environment for easy business development. He has presented the 2 years on the last centuries, 3 years on the middle. Thank you for creating this opportunity. And I want to pledge my personal and regulated participation and involvement in development.
Chairman of the steering committee for the summit, Chike Madweke, described the gathering as a dynamic platform to share ideas, investigate pressing challenges and pave the way for the development of the area.
We have gathered here to create awareness of the potential that abound in our local government in terms of content, capacity, capability, and geography. It behoves on us to take up the opportunities that abound and prepare ourselves to take the Oji River development book by the horn and prepare for even our children yet unborn a place where they can find opportunities and relevance.
The consensus by various speakers at the summit is that Oji River local government area is blessed with vast natural resources and manpower. What is left now is how to tap this endowment for the much desired development which the people of the area are anxiously yearning for. In Enugu, reporting for security.
The sole administrator of the Rivers State, retired Vice Admiral Ibok Ete-Ibas, has vowed to use the sweeping powers granted to him as sole administrator to deal with protesters in the state. In a statement signed by the Senior Special Assistant on Media to the Rivers State Government, Hector Igbokwuobo. The sole administrator warned those engaged in frequent protests over the state of emergency imposed on Rivers to stop forthwith or be dealt with. He warned supporters of the suspended governor Siminalayi Fubara to exercise restraint, saying that the ongoing protest is a test of his resolve to deal with the situation. The sole administrator said he has chosen to exercise restraint rather than use the broad powers granted to him by the Gazette under which he was appointed. Ibas explained that restoring institutions in the state will not be achieved through protest, harassment, or intimidation, and that such actions are unnecessary. A coalition of women under the aegis of Rivers Women United for SIM staged a peaceful gathering in Port Harcourt calling for the restoration of peace in Rivers State and the reinstatement of suspended Governor Siminalayi Fubara. The women, who turned out in large numbers, described Rivers as peaceful states that urged President Bola Tinubu to intervene in the lingering political crisis. They called for the reinstatement of all suspended elected officials, insisting that Governor Fubara had committed no wrongdoing to justify his suspension. The protest, which began along the major road and advanced to the Rivers State Government House, featured placards with bold inscriptions such as "Bring back Fubara," "Save our democracy," "Is the law different for Rivers State?" and "God of justice, arise for Rivers." Chanting songs of solidarity, the women, who described themselves as mothers and wives, appealed directly to President Bola Tinubu to lift the suspension on Governor Fubara and reinstate all democratic institutions in the state. Women have been protesting and rallying for the reinstatement of Fubara since his suspension in the month of March. A coalition of top legal practitioners, the Public Interest Lawyers League, PILL, has demanded the resignation of Nigerian Bar Association NBA President Afam Osigwe and Emeka Obiogulu, chairman of the NBA Annual General Conference Organizing Committee, over the controversy surrounding the 300 million naira payments from Rivers State government. The payments reportedly made by suspended Governor Siminalayi Fubara was meant for the NBA's annual conference. Despite relocating the event to Enugu, the NBA insists the money was a goodwill gesture, not a bribe. A press conference in Abuja, PIL President Abdul Mohamud urged the NBA to refund the sum, stressing that the association cannot claim moral leadership while lacking financial transparency. Mahmoud described the NBA stance as disgraceful and symptomatic of deeper institutional failures. He called for accountability and immediate action to restore public trust. Peel also condemned the secrecy surrounding the transaction, pointing out it wasn't reflected in any official financial disclosures or acknowledged by the organizing committee. The group urged the NBA to release an audited financial report of all funds related to the 2025 conference. The league resolved that the NBA must return the 300 million naira as a gesture of responsibility and warned it would pursue legal and advocacy routes if necessary, vowing, quote, "We will mobilize, advocate, and litigate to ensure the rule of law starts with the bar itself." The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Olufemi Oloyede, has ordered soldiers to flush out new terrorist group in Kayama and Baruten local government areas of Kwara State to guard against the spread of their activities to other regions of the country. Oloyede, who made the call while addressing the troops during his visit to Sobi Barracks in Ilorin, the state's capital, said that the task of flushing out the group must be done in the next 1 month. The army chief told the troops that the country cannot afford to allow bandits to spread out to another part of the country, again insisting that the activities of the new terror group named Mahmuda must be nipped in the bud. He maintained that having another form of Boko Haram in any part of the country would not be allowed. According to him, what is happening in Kwara cannot be threatening the sanity in Nigeria generally and must therefore be isolated and dealt with directly. President Bola Tinubu has directed an immediate overhaul of national security strategies and end to the escalating violence in Borno, Benue, Plateau, and Kwara states. Tinubu, who met with security chiefs at the State House Abuja for more than 2 hours, said the killing of innocent people in the country must cease. The National Security Advisor, Noor Ribadus, told State House correspondents that the service chiefs briefed the president on all the attacks in the state, the death toll, and the destruction of property. He said the president ordered a new approach to tackling the security challenges and gave the security chiefs the chance to come and brief him again. The NSA said the president highlighted the need to involve the local councils and state governments more in tackling cases of insecurity. Still to come, Taling urges political parties to give women 50% positions. Step aside in 2027, Hakeem Baba Ahmed writes Tinubu to stay with us. A former Chief of Naval Staff, Rear Admiral Alison Madueke, has added his voice to the call for the establishment of a state police to help tackle the worsening insecurity in various parts of the country. Admiral Madueke made the call while addressing the Economic and Development Summit put together by the chairman of Oji River Local Government Area, Greg Anyabudike, at the council headquarters in Oji River. He regretted that even when governors are labeled as chief security officers of their various states, they have no control over the police in their states. Madueke, who was also a former governor of the old Anambra State, commended the local government for organizing the summit, which he said is first of its kind in the area. He, however, suggested that issues such as access to land or industrial estates and provision of power should be addressed to bring about the much desired economic development. The governor of Imo State, Hobos Odima, has given up commercial drivers operating with tinted windows 72 hours to remove them or face legal consequences. This directive was announced in a press release issued by the Chief Press Secretary and Special Advisor on Media to Governor Oguike Nwachukwu, said law enforcement agencies have been instructed to support government officials in enforcing the order once the deadline expires. The crackdown follows numerous reports linking tinted commercial vehicles, especially buses, to criminal activities across the state. Nwachukwu warned that violators will be prosecuted after the 72-hour grace period, serving as a deterrent to others who might ignore the law. United Nations Children's Fund UNICEF has praised vaccines as one of humanity's greatest health achievements, noting that essential immunizations have saved more than 154 million lives in the last 50 years. This was stated by Juliet Chinue, Chief of Field Office at UNICEF Enugu, during a two-day media dialogue in Enugu to commemorate the 2025 World Immunization Week. Chilue announced the theme of this year's campaign as Immunization for All is Humanly Possible, and reveals plans for a widespread immunization drive across 12 key states: Abia, Akwa Ibom, Anambra, Bayelsa, Cross River, Benue, Ebonyi, Enugu, Delta, Rivers, Imo, and Kogi. Speaking to health professionals and journalists, she expressed hope for the initiative's success, stating, "I'm pleased to join this important dialogue aimed at strengthening access to quality immunization, particularly for the children we serve." The event, co-organized with the Broadcasting Corporation of Abia States, guided media representatives from the targeted states who committed to supporting and closely tracking the campaign, especially in rural communities. The National Human Rights Commission, NHRC, and the National Agency for the Control of AIDS, NACA, has called for the local production of HIV/AIDS test kits and medications as a strategic response to recent funding shortfalls impacting the fight against the disease. The call was made during the opening session of a three-day stakeholders engagement on the review and implementation of the anti-discrimination programs under the HIV and AIDS Anti-Discrimination Act of 2014, held in Lagos, which brought together key stakeholders and dignitaries from across the country. Speaking at the event, NHRC Executive Secretary Dr. Tony Ojukwu highlighted the urgent need for enhanced research and development towards local production of antiretroviral drugs and medical supplies. Ojukwu further called on the Nigerian government to demonstrate greater commitment by increasing the national health budget, noting that the responsibility to eliminate discrimination against people living with HIV/AIDS must not rest solely with the federal government. Also speaking at the forum, Deputy Director of Community and Prevention Care Services at NACA, Dr. Chukwugozie Ujam, provided insight into the agency's ongoing efforts in the fight against HIV/AIDS. Ujam reported that Nigeria has made significant progress with HIV prevalence rates seeing a substantial decline, and emphasized that NACA is now shifting its strategic focus from treatment to prevention, aiming to forestall any resurgence of the disease. A former Minister of Women Affairs, Pauline Tallen, has called on political parties in the country to amend their constitutions and mandatorily allocate 50% of appointments and elected positions to women. Tallen made the appeal while delivering a keynote address at a two-day capacity building conference organized by the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies and the Inter-Party Advisory Council in Abuja. Tallen also suggested that President Bola Tinubu, as a former governor, senator, and pro-democracy activist, should lead the charge for gender inclusion, stressing that his leadership can make a defining difference. Tallen, a former deputy governor of Plateau State and one-time Minister of State, Science and Technology, described women as the bedrock and the spice of every successful engineering campaigns or political movement. The former minister noted that while Rwanda was leading globally with women occupying 64% of parliamentary seats, Nigeria has just 17 women out of 360 House of Reps and 4 out of 109 senators. Also speaking, the national chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, Yusuf Dantale, acknowledged women's vital contributions and their efforts in addressing digital challenges. He said that while issues like discrimination and underrepresentation persist, they were not unsurmountable. Up ahead, NATO Secretary General Ruth says meets with Hexet at the Pentagon. Polish and Israeli residents discuss Gaza peace at Auschwitz Holocaust Memorial. These are more after the break. Need some hot water. Need some hot water. The German government cut its economic growth forecast on Thursday and now sees stagnation in 2025 instead of a 0.3% expansion, as uncertainty from global trade disputes is set to hobble growth and dampen investment. Germany was the only G7 economy that failed to grow for the last 2 years, and the tariffs announced by US President Donald Trump could put Europe's largest economy on track for a third year without growth for the first time in history. Germany's exports-driven economy was already struggling with a weak global demand for its product and foreign companies chipping away at its competitiveness. While announcing the figures, Economy Minister Robert Habeck called for the European Union and the US to find a solution on trade, but also for the EU to prepare countermeasures if needed. The threat and imposition of tariffs have a direct impact on the very export-oriented German economy, as well as an indirect impact on the German economy because the global markets are nervous, Habeck said. For 2026, the government now expects growth of 1%, down slightly from its January forecast of 1.1%, expecting some uptick under the incoming government of Chancellor-in-waiting Friedrich Merz. Exports are expected to fall by 2.2% this year, following a 1.1% decline in 2024. Next year, exports are expected to rise by 1.3%. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump's embattled Secretary of Defense met with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte after a week of turmoil at the Pentagon and a new Washington Post report claiming Pete Hegseth had the Signal messaging app installed on his computer. Hegseth, who fired 2 of his top aides and 2 other senior officials last Friday, has come under fire for using the Signal to share highly sensitive security details for the second time in a group chat that included his brother, wife, and personal attorney. Arriving for a meeting with Rutte, Hegseth did not respond to questions about his use of the app. Rutte is in Washington for meetings with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. And elsewhere, India's response to a deadly militant attack in Kashmir marks a major policy shift, with a senior national security expert saying the government is sending a blunt message to Pakistan. His remarks came after India downgraded ties with Pakistan, suspended the Indus Waters Treaty, and shot the only land border crossing moves announced a day after 26 civilians were killed by suspected militants in Kashmir's Baisaran Valley. The attack also left 17 injured and was the deadliest targeting in civilians since the 2008 Mumbai attacks. The militant group Kashmir Resistance claimed responsibility, citing anger over demographic changes in the region where tens of thousands of non-locals have settled in recent years. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi condemned the deadly militant attacks in Kashmir, where police have identified two of the gunmen as Pakistani. At a rally in the eastern Indian state of Bihar, Modi folded his hands in prayer in remembrance for the 26 men who were shot and killed in a meadow in a Pahalgam region of Indian Kashmir. Modi then vowed to pursue a track and punish those responsible in the track, drawing thunderous applause from thousands of supporters. Meanwhile, in New Delhi, thousands protested outside Pakistan's High Commission, demanding action over a deadly militant attack. Modi's comments are, however, bound to further inflame ties between the nuclear-armed rivals after India downgraded ties with Pakistan late on Wednesday, suspending a 6-decade-old water treaty. Pakistan closed its airspace for Indian airlines and rejected New Delhi's suspension of a water-sharing treaty in retaliation for neighboring India's response to a deadly militant attack in the Indian-ruled part of Kashmir. The announcements from the Pakistan Prime Minister's office followed a meeting of the National Security Committee a day after India said there were cross-border elements to Tuesday's attack in which 26 men were shot dead by militants at a popular tourist destination. Indian police published notices naming 3 militant suspects and saying 2 were Pakistanis, but New Delhi has not offered any proof of the linkage or shared any more details. However, it downgraded ties with Pakistan, suspended the 6-decade-old treaty on the waters of the Indus River, and closing the only land crossing between the two neighbors. Like India, Pakistan claims both the Indian and Pakistani ruled parts of Kashmir. Ali Sharabi, who was held as a hostage by Hamas, joined Holocaust survivors at the March of the Living memorial ceremony at the site of Nazi Germany's Auschwitz concentration camp. Sharabi was freed after 491 days of captivity, only to discover that his British-born wife and 2 daughters had been killed in the Hamas attacks on October 7, 2023. Among families of hostages standing next to him were Faina Kopastain and Zili Wenket, Holocaust survivors and grandmothers of still captive Bar and released Omar. They both compared their experience in Nazi concentration camps with those of their grandsons and other hostages. Nazi Germany killed between 1.2 and 1.5 million at the Auschwitz camp, most of them Jews. Other groups of people who were killed included Polish political prisoners, Soviet prisoners of war, Polish gypsies, homosexuals, people with disabilities, and prisoners of conscience or religious faith. The presidents of Poland and Israel spoke about the conflict in Gaza and Israeli hostages as they attended the March of the Living memorial ceremony at the site of Nazi Germany's Auschwitz concentration camp. Poland's Andrzej Duda said he and Israel's Isaac Herzog had talked about their hope for an end to the conflict and the return of the remaining hostages held by the Palestinian militant group Hamas. The Polish president said he hoped a peace deal could be arranged in Ukraine in the coming months, crediting U.S. President Trump and his administration for efforts. Duda said any peace deal should prevent further Russian aggression against Ukraine or Russia's other neighbors. Trump in recent days has said he will walk away from trying to negotiate a settlement in Ukraine if Kyiv and Moscow do not make a deal soon. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that he did not see signs the United States was putting strong pressure on Russia as part of its push for peace. Speaking at a news briefing with a South African counterpart, Cyril Ramaphosa, Zelensky said that Kyiv was doing what its allies proposed, though it could not flout its constitution. He added that it was already a big compromise on Kyiv's part to agree to negotiate with Russia once a ceasefire is in place. On his part, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said diplomacy and dialogue are the only path to peace in Ukraine, revealing that he had recently discussed the conflicts separately with US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking after the holding talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Pretoria, Ramaphosa said he spoke with President Trump earlier in the day. Ramaphosa also recalled a phone call with President Putin earlier in the week.
Not justify these are politics they're playing. This
In sports, Abia Angels and Remo Stars Ladies played out a thrilling 2-2 draw in a rescheduled March Day 13 clash of the Nigerian Premier Women League (NPWL) at the Umuahia Township Stadium. Both teams were evenly matched throughout the game. Remo Stars Ladies netted through Bolaji Olamide in the 35th and 92nd minutes, while Abia Angels responded with goals from Lucky Mary 40th minute and Mariam Abdurrashid 93rd minute. The result secures a historic first Super 6 qualification for Remo Stars Ladies. In Lafia, Nasarawa Amazons sealed their Super 6 spot with a 1-0 win over defending champions Edo Queens. Edo Queens, Bayelsa Queens, and Rivers Angels have already booked their places in the tournament, while Niger Rattles and FC Robo Queens will fight for the final playoff spot on the league's last match day next week. And elsewhere, former marathon world record holder Eliud Kipchoge said he is raring to go ahead of this week's London Marathon. The 2016 and 2020 Olympic marathon champion, who holds an unofficial world record as the only person to have run a marathon distance inside 2 hours, returns to London for the first time since 2020. Kenya's Kipchoge, 40, is a record 4-time winner of the London Marathon. He was the men's marathon world record holder from 2018 to 2023 until compatriot Kelvin Kiptum surpassed him at the 2023 Chicago Marathon. Kipchoge will face Sebastian Sawe, who won on his marathon debut in Valencia, reigning Berlin marathon champion Milkesa Mangesha, and Abdi Nagiye, who won the latest edition of the New York City Marathon. Jacob Kiplimo will also race in the men's field, making his marathon debut. That's the news this hour. I'm Charles Pius. Thanks for watching. See you in another 5 minutes for the morning show. Morning, my brother.